The experiment begins. I had read and thought about it a great deal, but I had no practical experience. It seemed to me that I should have some first-hand practical experience. Only then, I thought, would my ideas get safe and firm. Only then would they mature, and only then would I realize how far my views were correct and how far they were only hollow speculations. I approached the head of the education department and requested him to give me a primary school class for my experiment. The education officer laughed. "Forget it," he said. "You won't be able to do it. Teaching children and at the primary school level is no joke. It is an uphill task. You are a thinker and a writer. It is easy to dash off an article sitting at a comfortable table and chair. It is quite easy to imagine yourself teaching, but it is extremely difficult to put your ideas into practice and to carry the experiment through. That's exactly why I want to have first-hand experience," I said. "I want to base my conclusion on reality." In the end, the education officer agreed. "All right," he said. "If you are so neat, by all means try it out for 1 year. I will arrange for you to take a class of Standard 4 in a primary school. Here is a copy of the syllabus. These are the textbooks. Here is a copy of departmental rules regarding leave and other ancillary matters." I looked wistfully at the papers. I picked up the syllabus and put it in my pocket. As I began tying off the textbooks into a bundle, the education officer said, "Look here, you may conduct whatever experiment you like, but please bear in mind that there will be examinations at the end of the academic year. Your work will be evaluated by the outcome at these examinations." "Agreed," I answered readily, and then added, "I have one request to make. I would like you alone to be the examiner and evaluate my performance. You are permitting me to conduct the experiment. I would naturally like to show my work to you directly. I feel that only you would be able to understand the reasons for my success or failure, whatever they may be." The education officer smiled as he gave his assent, and I left his office. I went through the entire syllabus. I was convinced some changes would be made for the better. I also went through the textbooks. It was easy to see what was good and what was not. I figured out the changes that could be made. I could visualize the whole outline of tile plan of work from the first day to the last. I took into account the number of days that would be taken up by examinations, results, etc. The whole plan seemed to be ready. So many days of work, the manner in which it was to be done, the outcome. I was so engrossed in my thought that I did not realize it was 2 hours past midnight. I prepared my notes for the next day. It was 3 in the morning when I went to bed. The next day found me all enthusiastic, full of self-confidence and sense of urgency. A quick bath and breakfast and I reached the school number 3 in good time. The school gates were not open. The headmaster had not come. The school peon had gone to his house to collect the school keys. The children were arriving and were running about on the road. I waited eagerly for the school to begin. I was eager to take my class and start my work, eager to put my new plan into practice, eager to bring about peace and order in the class, eager to make classroom teaching interesting and win over my pupils. I felt my pulse throbbing. The bell rang. The boys entered their classes. The headmaster took me to my class and introduced me to the pupils. Listen, boys, he said. Henceforth, Mr. Lakshmi Ram here will be your class teacher. You must obey his orders and no pranks and mischief, I warn you. I looked at the children who were to be my charges for the next 12 months. I could see some of them smiling, some winking at each other. A few nodded stiffly. One or two stared at me in mock wonder. The rest stood looking totally unconcerned. I looked on. These are the children I have to teach. This strange mischievous lot. I thought to myself. I was a little unnerved, but I recovered. Nothing to worry. I told myself. I will take them on by and by. I took out from my pockets the notes I had prepared the previous night and glanced at the list of activities I had made. First, a game of silence. Next, checking up of classroom cleanliness to be followed by a chorus sung, and lastly, some conversation with pupils. I told my pupils, come on, let us play game of silence. When I say Om Shanti, every one of you will be absolutely quiet. I will then close the door. It will be dark in the classroom. Since we shall all be quiet, we shall hear the sounds outside and around us. It will be great fun. You will be able to hear flies buzzing around and even your own breathing. After that, I will sing a song. You will just listen. I finished speaking then and then started the game. Om Shanti, I said. But the boys continued to talk and to push one another. Om Shanti, I repeated again and again, but it had no effect. I became a little uneasy. I could not shout at them to shut up and behave. I could not beat them into obedience. So I went on with the games. I closed the shutters of the windows and doors. It was now dark in the classroom. The students started their own game. Some started making a low humming noise. Some started making cat calls. Some started stamping their feet. One fellow clapped and soon the others joined him. Another laughed and the whole class followed suit. I was aghast. I turned pale. I opened all the shutters and went out of the classroom for a while. When I re-entered, the whole class had become boisterous. The children were calling out Om Shanti to one another in mock imitation of my words. Some were closing the shutters of the windows. My notes have turned out to be impracticable, I thought. It was easy to prepare notes at home and imagine teaching. In practice, it is a tough task. It is absurd to talk of the game of silence at this stage to a group of children who have all along been brought up in an atmosphere of noise and disorder. I shall now begin afresh from where I went wrong. It was good in a way that I slipped up at the very first step. Tomorrow I will try a new approach. Boys, I said, we won't have class anymore today. We shall meet tomorrow. You can have the day off today. At the word day off, the boys rushed out of the class shouting holiday. They ran out jumping and making such a noise that the teachers and pupils of other classes wondered what the matter was. The headmaster came out of his room and accosted me. "How dare you let the pupils off? There are still 2 hours to go," he said, frowning. He was very angry. "They were not in a receptive mood today," I said. "They were disturbed. I could see that during the game of silence." "You cannot let the pupils off without permission," said the headmaster sternly. "If the pupils of the class are let off, those in other class would be disturbed and won't study. Such experiments cannot be allowed." Then he added a little scornfully, "Forget these fads about receptive mood and the like. The game of silence may be good for Montessori schools. Here in primary schools, a sharp slap would make all the students quiet. I would advise you to teach the pupils as the other teachers do, so that you can show some good results at the annual examinations. As it is, you have lost one day and made a fool of yourself." I felt sorry for the headmaster. "Sir," I said, "everyone has been resorting the beating while teaching, and the obvious results of these methods are that the children have become uncouth, rude, restless, and disturbed. During their 4 years of education here, the boys have, as I have marked, learnt only this: to shout and hiss at the teachers and to clap and stamp. They do not like school. See how happily they ran off as soon as they were told it was a day off for them." The headmaster could not deny the truth of this. "Is that so?" he said. "Well, we will see what you do about it." I returned home a little dejected. "It seems the task is quite difficult," I said to myself as I sat down. "In fact, it is going to be a really tough test. Well, no matter. I am not going to give up. I should have known one does not play the game of silence in this manner. In Montessori schools, a lot of preparatory work is done before the game is taken off. I was a fool to take it off on my very first day. I should have got to know my pupils and established rapport with them. Only then would they listen to me and follow my instructions. These boys do not like the school and they want holidays. It is no easy task to work with them." I prepared a plan of work for the next day and went to bed. I passed the night dreaming of the day's happening and the next day's work. Next day, I was at school when the gates opened. The boys crowded around me. "Sir," they cried, "why not have a holiday today also? Please, sir, a day off today also." "All right," I said, "I will let you off today, not for the whole day, but only for 2 hours. However, you will first listen to a story that I am going to tell you. We shall discuss other matters afterwards." I began my story. "Once there was a king. He had 7 queens. Each queen had a prince and a princess. The boys sat down around me to hear the story. There was some commotion and sobbing. So I said, 'Boys, this is not right. Sit around in an orderly manner.' That brought about some order. They said, 'Sir, please continue the story. What happened next?' I smiled and picked up the thread. Each of the 7 princes had a palace of their own. There were in the garden of each palace 7 trees of falls." The boys listened with rapt attention. The whole class was quiet, not a sound or a movement anywhere. The absolute silence surprised the headmaster, and he came to the class to find what the matter was. He asked me, "Are you telling a story?" "Yes," I said. "A story and a new kind of game of silence." The headmaster turned back. I continued with the story. There was some noise in the neighboring class. I drew the pupils' attention to it. "See how this noise disturbs us," all the boys agreed. Halfway through the story I stopped. "Tell me," I said to my pupils, "if you want a holiday, we shall stop here now. If not, we may continue with the story." "Please continue the story. We don't want the day off," they answered, every one of them. "Very well. In that case, we shall proceed with the story. But first, let us talk together for a while. Then we shall have the story right up to the end of the day." A boy interrupted. "Keep the talk for tomorrow. Today let us have only the story so that we hear it to the very end. The story is long enough to continue for 4 days," I said. "Oh," they exclaimed, "so long. That is very interesting." I took the class register and wrote down the names of the pupils. After entering all the names, I marked their attendance. It was all quick and orderly. "Look here," I said. "Every day we shall have the roll call first and then the story." I resumed my story and went on right up to the last bell. School for the day was over, but the children wanted to stay after school hours to hear the story. "But enough for the day," I said. "We can continue the story tomorrow. However, we must decide first. Do you want a day of tomorrow or the story?" "Story!" the whole class shouted in unison. As the boys went out of the classroom, the word "story" reverberated in the corridors. "Thank God," I said. "I have salvaged the day. A story seems to work a miracle." That is certainly true. The next day, as I entered the class, the boys crawled around me, all smiling and begging me to begin with the story. "The roll call first," I reminded them, "and then some conversation, and then the story." I took out a piece of chalk from my pocket and drew a large circle on the floor. "Sit around the circle, everybody." As I spoke, I sat down myself. "This way," I said. "This is where I shall sit to tell you the story." The boys sat down. I marked the attendance and then I began to tell the story. They were in a good receptive mood and they listened as if in a trance. At one stage, I stopped and asked, "Do you like the story?" "Oh, yes," they chorused. "We do very much." "You like to listen to a story?" I went on. "Would you like to read one?" "Yes," they cried. "We would like to read as well. But where are the story books that we can read?" "Suppose I get you the story books, you read them?" "Oh, sure. But you should also tell us stories," put in one clever lad. "Our reading stories would not be enough." "All right," I said and resumed my storytelling. The bell rang. All the boys crowded around me. Some looked at me with affection. Some tried to touch my hand. Some just stood as if in a spell. "Out," I said. "The school is over. Now be up." "No, we won't," shouted a few. "We are ready to sit till late in the evening if you continue the story." I sent them away. Other teachers came to me. One said, "You have worked wonders. Our boys also want stories. They don't pay attention to the classroom teaching. They keep begging for permission to come to your class to hear your story, or else they want us to tell them a story." "Then tell them a story," I said. "But who knows storytelling? We won't know a single suitable story." I smiled. The next day was a Sunday. I went to the education officer. "Mr. Lakshmiram," he said, "the headmaster reports that you have been telling stories to the class all the while. It is true, storytelling is the current program. But then, when are you going to begin your experiment? How would you be able to complete the prescribed course of studies?" "The experiment is already on, sir. It is my personal experience that the story is a wonderful magic pill that helps to establish rapport between pupils and the teachers. Those very boys who were not prepared to listen to me on the first day, who had honored me with shout and catcalls, have become quiet since I started telling them a story. They now have a sort of affection for me. They listen to me and see it as I ask them to. I don't have to shout at them to keep them quiet, and they don't leave the school even after it is over." "All right, I get your point. Now, when do you propose to begin your new methods of teaching?" "Well, sir, this itself is the new method of teaching. I am teaching them orderly behavior through story sessions. They are being motivated. I am exposing them to literature and linguistic skills. This will be followed by teaching of other subjects. See that you do not spend the whole year just telling stories," said the education officer. The people were sitting in a circle as usual for the story session. I went to the blackboard and wrote on it, "Today's program: roll call, conversation, story." After the call, I began talking to them.